Chapter 6. Thursday, April 11th, 1912. 12:05 p.m. Virginia licked strawberry jam from her fingers and grinned with satisfaction. She had wolfed down both her scones and one of Albert's, too. He eyed the crumbs on the tea cart, wishing the steward had brought 6 scones instead of only 4. He thought of the lucky people in the dining saloon eating as much as they wanted. He thought of the white linen cloths on the tables and the stewards in their spotless uniforms. He thought of the oak-paneled walls and the richly carved pedestal chairs and the blue and white bone china without a single mar or chip. Mostly, he thought of haddock amandine. Mouth-watering haddock amandine. Compared to the elegant meals on the Titanic, even Mattie Lou's cooking at grandmother's house, even her peanut soup served with hot biscuits and honey, seemed countrified and boring. Virginia belched loudly. Pig, Albert thought.
Emily Brewer loves you,
Virginia suddenly blurted.
Huh? Emily loves you.
Albert's cheeks grew warm.
That's stupid. She doesn't even know me.
Ginny shrugged.
She loves you anyway.
Who said?
She did. She said you looked handsome in your long trousers last night.
Without thinking, Albert reached for the pocket of his houndstooth jacket. He'd managed to pin it from the inside with 3 safety pins, but he hadn't been able to make it lie flat, and the pins showed through slightly. Mother had been so upset yesterday, he hadn't dared tell her the jacket was torn. Now, dressed in knickers again, he felt like a child, especially with a pocket that was pinned in place.
Well, I don't love Emily. Yes, you do. You're always looking at her. I am not. You were looking at her the whole time Sarah and I were playing Queen. Liar. Don't you want to know what else she said?
Albert considered his answer to that question. Of course he wanted to know what Emily had said about him, but he didn't want Ginny to think he did.
Not especially. She said you remind her of her papa,
Virginia reported.
She misses her papa.
Well, what was that supposed to mean? Virginia reached for her plate on the tea cart and held it up to her face so she could lick the remains of strawberry jam. Albert cringed. How could his sister be so disgusting? As she set the plate back on the cart, she thought of something else she wanted.
Let me hold your watch.
No, your hands are dirty. She wiped them on the sides of her dress.
There. Give it to me.
Frowning, Albert took a napkin from the cart and dipped a corner into the cooling pot of water they'd used for their tea. Here. Wipe your hands with this, your face too. Ginny did as she was told, then reached for the watch again.
Give it to me.
Oh, all right. Albert bent close to her so the chain would reach far enough and removed Father's watch from his pocket. There.
I want to look at it in my lap. Unhook the chain.
You'll drop it and break it.
I will not.
You always say you won't break things, but then you do anyway.
Emily lets Sarah hold her books.
So?
Both of them,
Ginny added.
The one about the saints and martyrs, and the one with the poems by the dead man who used to live in Rome.
Bully for Emily, Albert thought. Maybe she'll grow up to read stories about saints and martyrs to every pitiful child she ever meets. Maybe she'll spend her entire life on ships and trains, torturing adults in every country of the world by reciting Ovid. What does that have to do with anything? He asked.
Their papa gave Emily those books before he died. She always reads them the way you always look at Papa's watch.
Albert drew in his breath. That wasn't quite the explanation he'd expected.
Unhook your watch,
Virginia repeated.
I want to hold it.
No, Albert wanted to say.
He was my father, too,
Ginny added.
Well,
said Albert, releasing the fob. He was unable to argue with Ginny's logic.
Be careful.
She took it clumsily, sprung open the cover, then shut it again with a click. What was it about Albert that reminded Emily of her father? He wanted to ask Virginia straight out, but decided not to show too much interest. Instead, he thought of a less direct question as he studied his hands in his lap.
How did their father die?
Virginia opened and shut the watch cover.
Sarah said her papa got some strange sickness in the place where he was a missionary. The doctors in Ceylon didn't have any medicine for it.
Albert felt a pang in his chest. He wondered how old Mr. Brewer had been. Older than Father? Father had died at 36. Only 36. Albert remembered how unfair that had seemed, how deserted he'd felt, how angry. He hadn't been able to sleep or do his lessons or even finish his sketches of the White House. Then, one day, when Mother had left Virginia with a friend while she went to the cemetery, Albert had walked by himself to Rock Creek Park, and there, in a secluded spot, away from the picnickers and hikers and botany students, he'd picked up a stick and hit the ground with it as hard as he could, yelling and yelling, louder than the lions or elephants in their cages, until he wore out every bit of his strength. His throat hurt when he got home, and his arm was tired, but he felt lots better inside. Ginny's small voice brought Albert back to the present.
Robert has the sickness too. Robert will probably die.
Albert looked up, shocked. Robert was only 2, and Virginia shouldn't talk so casually about death.
Who said?
He raged. Ginny shrugged.
Everybody, I guess.
As she spoke, she went on clicking the watch cover open and shut.
They're taking Robert home to